I'm wearing a giant scarf today because it is cold in Chile. Today, I'm going to talk about two things that I've learned from being an emotional authority in human design. So if you don't know what human design is yet, what are you doing? Go check it out because it's an amazing tool that can help you in your life. But you don't really need to know what it is to be able to gain something from this video. The two lessons that I'm going to be talking about in this video have been helping me evolve into a more conscious human, and I hope that that's just what they'll be able to do for you. So hi, hello, welcome to my channel, welcome to this space. My name's Trini. If you don't already know me, I am an HD specialist, and I use this space to share about my personal development, personal growth process. So I'm going to explain to you very briefly what it means to be an emotional authority in human design. If you don't know what that is, again, you can look up your chart, you can find out. Actually, about 50% of people are emotional authority in the world. So there's a big chance that you might be one. But briefly, when you are an emotional authority in human design, what that information asks you to do in terms of experimenting with your life is it tells you, you know what, you are not able to really see the truth of things in the moment. You are always seeing life and everything that's in front of you with a filter of emotion. So in order for you to make the best decisions in your life, you must wait for clarity. You must not take impulsive decisions. You must not make important decisions in the moment. You must give it some time, and with giving it this time, you will receive clarity about what's best for you. So that is emotional authority in human design in a nutshell. And holy crap, when I found this out about myself, it was kind of like a lightning struck me, because honestly, like, making decisions had been one of the hardest things in my life. It had been one of those points, those sensitive points where whenever I did have to make decisions, which honestly, think about it, as humans, we're making decisions all the fucking time. So whenever I made a decision, especially when it came to my business and what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go this way or go that way, I would end up feeling so emotional, so impulsive. I would end up taking so many impulsive decisions, and that led to a lot of anxiety, both in the moment of making the decision and then post making the decision, feeling that I had made the wrong decision. And honestly, a lot of the times I did make the wrong decision. So when I found out that my kind of strategy in human design had to do with waiting for clarity, I was like, holy freaking kaboo-boos. Because I hadn't been doing that for 30 years of my life. So at least, it's like when somebody tells you to do something that's so different from what you've been doing, at least there's a little bit of hope that that may actually change your life. I definitely resonated with this information. I was like, well, yeah, impulsivity and making decisions that way has never been helpful for me, so let me try that. So I went into the experiment, and I've been, more than a year using this information, trying to observe what my decision-making process is like, trying to take more time for the important things especially, and then also there's this observation piece of looking at how I'm feeling towards something over time. So it's not like how I'm feeling towards, for example, moving to a new country right now. It's about how do I feel right now, and then hold on, let's wait and see, how do I feel tomorrow? Let's take note of that. How do I feel the next day? And then through time, you kind of get an idea of where you are at with that decision. So being in this process of observing my decision-making process, observing myself as an emotional being, what we call in human design someone who has an emotional center defined, it has given me a really, really nice and useful perspective on life, on how we function as human beings, on, in my opinion, what we're moving towards as we go raising our consciousness. And it's given me these two very valuable life lessons that actually, I was thinking about it, and they don't just apply for the people that have an emotional authority. It's actually two life lessons that we can all apply in our lives. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I am going to be giving you these 2 life lessons that are kind of similar, but they're both very profound, and they're both making a very big difference in my life. They're making me feel more peaceful, they're making me feel more mindful, and they're adding meaning and magic to my life. And you guys know, if you already know me, if you've already been watching my content, that I am all about sharing how to tap into that magic in our lives, and these 2 lessons are definitely something that's helped me do that. So here they go. The first lesson I've learned from observing my decision-making process is, in order to keep evolving as a human being, I want to not know how I feel about things. I feel like I should say that again, because it's not that easy to just kind of like take that in for a moment. So in order to keep evolving as a human being, I want to not know how I feel about things. So think about the way that you naturally interact with reality. And I think for all of us, but I can say like definitely for me, there's always this like push towards certainty. There's this push to like knowing more. Knowing more is always better, right? That's like our perspective. And that's totally normal, because in our like survival mind, not knowing and uncertainty equals danger. For so many years, when we didn't know, for example, a new place, a new environment, that was danger, because we didn't know if there were like animals there that were predators, or we didn't know how to find food in that space. So it's very normal that the brain, because it's been programmed for so many years before we've had this kind of society, that uncertainty equals danger. And so many of our patterns are based on this like survival mind. But in my opinion, one of the biggest shifts we're making as we are all raising our consciousness, as more people are waking up, one of those biggest shifts is to realize and just have the realization that we are no longer in that survival state. So when we look at our lives today, it's quite evident, right? Like for most of us, survival is no longer the thing that we are fighting for, that we are worrying about in our daily basis. A lot of us are worrying about or working to grow our business or fulfill our life purpose. A lot of the people in the world, and I'm not saying that some aren't still unfortunately in this space, but a lot of society is not in the place where we're fighting for survival. So when you can make that conscious realization that that's not where you are, then what happens is you can observe the patterns that the mind still is holding on to that come from that survival mechanism, and you can kind of tell it, yeah, I see you, I get where you're coming from, but that's not something I'm going to identify with anymore. I'm going to choose this other kind of thought pattern. I'm going to choose this other behavior that doesn't reflect this survival mechanism. So that being said, I've found in my journey that actually not knowing so many times is more beneficial for my life and my well-being than knowing. So in this case, when I'm making decisions, not knowing how I feel about something right away is more beneficial for my life than knowing how I feel about that thing. Let me explain a little bit. So this is where I'm going to bring an example, because I think it's so much easier to understand with an example. So I'm just going to think of something like really random, like my husband asking me if we should order sushi. Whenever I go into a situation, go into making a decision, and I know how I feel about that thing, what is actually happening is I'm bringing all the baggage from my mind, which comes from all the experiences that I've had in this life in the past, taking all that data, and that data is influencing my decision of what's going to happen in the present moment. So in my observations of myself and my decision-making process, I observed that the auto mode, the robotic mode, the program mode of myself is that I will enter every single situation, every single decision with this assumption that comes from the past, from how that particular thing has treated me in the past, or the kind of flavor, emotional flavor it's giving me throughout my life. I'm bringing it forward into this present moment, and that is actually clouding my judgment. It's kind of making my decision for me. My mind is always telling me what I like, what I don't like, who I am, who I'm not, and what kind of thing I would do and what kind of thing I wouldn't do. It's this voice that is kind of like giving me orders in my life, if you really think about it. And if I'm acting from this voice, if I'm acting from the mind, if I'm always bringing all this data from the past, then I see it as then I'm living from conditioning. I'm living from my conditioning, and I'm not expressing the wholeness of who I am, my truest being of who I am, which the way I see it is has this infinite realm of possibilities. And in the spiritual world, I'm sure you've heard, we live in this quantum field that's actually been proven scientifically, this quantum field that gives us this infinite amount of possibilities. But why do we not often feel in touch with that infinity of possibilities is because we're bringing that past self and that identity that we've kind of cling to with our mind, and we're bringing it into the present moment, and we're making all our decisions from that point. And so basically what we're doing is we're just repeating the past. And this reminds me so much of what Joe Dispenza talks about. And he actually has a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, because essentially what you're doing if you're constantly listening to the mind is you're kind of replaying the same experiences from the past and then just placing it like a stamp on your present moment. And so if you think about it, and it can get quite depressive if you think about it, you're bringing the past, stamping it on the present moment. The next moment you do the same, the next moment you do the same. You're just repeating the past. So I want to go back to the sushi example, because I actually think it's a really good example, because when my husband comes up and he says like, hey, I was thinking about maybe ordering sushi tonight, that actually makes me really happy. It triggers an emotional response in me, and you'll notice if you observe your life and your decision-making process that everything in your life has this emotional response to it. And so for me, if I think about it consciously, what does him asking me to order sushi mean? It means we are okay financially because we can order out. It means it's kind of like a celebration. It means it's a night of not cooking. It always, for me in my life, ordering out and then ordering sushi has been kind of like a nice thing we do sometimes that brings me joy, it brings me pleasure. But then think about what that means. That means that in my life, I will always say yes to sushi. But what that becomes then, at least the way I look at it, it becomes this attachment in my life. It becomes like maybe one day when I'm not feeling too well, or maybe I'm feeling a little bit depressed, it's like I can use that sushi to cover that up. And that for me is kind of like the epitome of conditioning, when we are using patterns to not live our lives. So at least the way I view it is it can't be correct for me to always order sushi. Sushi can't always be the correct answer for my life. So the way that I've been doing it now that I'm observing this process is if he will ask the question, would you want to order sushi tonight? Then I'll remind myself, it's okay if it elicits that emotional response, but the important thing is to be able to observe it and then say, this is programming. And then I'll say, I don't know if I want it. As an emotional being, even if you're going to make that decision throughout the day, you only have a day to make it, but the first kind of conscious answer should be, I don't know. And then you're going to go in and explore how you feel about that thing. So the thing is to not go predisposed, not jump at an answer. Have an open mind about what your body might be thinking. Your body might be thinking about that thing. And then you can make a decision from kind of that clear state of mind where that voice is not ruling your actions. You're actually tuning into, how is my body feeling about this thing? Is this something that's going to nurture my soul in the moment? Is it going to make me feel good right now, today, and not from a programmed point of view? Okay, let's jump into lesson number 2 I've learned from being an emotional authority in human design and living my experiment. Lesson number 2 is the ideal mindset for interacting with other people or anything is beginner's mind. So everything we've talked about in this first lesson kind of carries over and is similar to how we interact with people in our lives. We can all observe that when we know someone for a while, we've seen them more than 1,000 times in our lives, then we create an image of who they are that then filters our experience with them. But if we want to live in a reality where there are infinite possibilities, like we talked about before, then we have to be able to lift that filter up from everyone we're interacting with and realize that nobody is actually a set of memories from who they are, that they're actually a limitless being just like you are in every single moment. And we have an ability to, with our consciousness, be able to see that in people. I realized that 100% of the time when I interact with people, especially those people that are usually around me, that I'm so used to being around, there's a certain expectation of how things are going to go with them. So your mind knows how things have gone in the past with that person, and then when you're approaching them in the present moment, your mind kind of has something to expect. And it will look for evidence of that thing that you already know happening in your experience. So you are kind of reproducing that experience all over again. So that's why I decided that in my life, I will make a conscious effort to try to have this beginner's mindset where, I don't know anything about the person as much as I can for every interaction. And you can do this by just observing the emotions, observing the assumptions, observing what you think the experience is going to be like, and then realizing that those are just thoughts and that those are just patterns and that that's not exactly the truth. Just with that awareness, the experience is bound to go so much more differently. Just because you're kind of like lifting up those thoughts into the surface and then not attaching, not identifying with them, what happens, or the way I've seen it happen in my life, is it sort of creates space, because now there's this empty space of not knowing how things are going to go. And when there's this empty space, then the universe will go and fill it with something new. But when you have these preconceptions of how things are going to go, and you're bringing in the assumptions of what this person is like and what they're going to react and what they're going to make you feel, then there's no empty room. And in order to have magic in your life, and in order to tap into the infinite possibilities, you have to have emptiness, because then the universe can come in and fill it in with magic. If not, you have no room for magic. So say you're interacting with your mom, your dad, your husband, your girlfriend, whoever, and you really you have no ability to see how that person is changing, how that person shifts and becomes someone new, unless you can lift up those expectations, you can lift up those past experiences that you have of that person. And I think this is especially beautiful for those people in our lives where it's hard. It's hard with them. Okay, so I was actually thinking about how I actually do this in my life, because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to approach people with beginner's mind, but how does that actually happen? And I realized that in my own experience, it helps me to just spend a few moments a week visualizing what it would mean or what it would be like or feel like to meet these people that I'm interacting with on a daily basis for the first time, and kind of feel into that. How would that feel when you will meet that person right now? And it's actually quite a beautiful exercise for me. I realized that just by doing that exercise, then every time I go into the interaction with that person, I actually did have a little bit of that beginner's mind already automatically. Even if I wasn't thinking about coming in with beginner's mind, that visualization exercise helped to set the intention and actually made a change in my interactions. Another thing that I do when I'm visualizing or just thinking about how it would be to meet that person is I think, well, what would I like about this person? What kind of things would stand out as positive about this person? And it helps a lot, because it takes the focus on the things that you always focus on these people, especially with the people where you're constantly focusing on what's wrong with them. So for me, it's quite beautiful to think that I have the possibility to become someone who can meet every single person, no matter how familiar they are to me, as a new person. Give them the opportunity every single moment to show themselves as whoever they want to be, without being predisposed to, an expectation. And I think, or there's really this true knowing within me, that as much, or the more that I practice this, the more that it comes back, right? So the more that I practice seeing people with this beginner's mind, and of course this beginner's mind comes with love and acceptance to whoever's in front of you, the more that you're going to feel people giving that back to you. So, in summary for this video, for me and what it's done for my life and what I believe it can do for you if you do practice these two things. And what were the two things? The first thing was starting to be more comfortable with not knowing how you feel about things. Breaking from that unconscious habit of always wanting to know how you feel, or always wanting to have certainty about things, and realizing that you actually benefit from not knowing and from exploring every moment as it is with no predispositions. That's number one. And then number two was approaching interactions and relationships and people with a beginner's mind as much as you can, as if you were meeting them for the first time all of the time. So what this has done for my own life, and why I'm sharing with you, so that hopefully it will do some of these things for your own life. First of all, give you access to more possibilities in your life. You're no longer bringing all the baggage from the past and painting your present moment, which is infinite, with the things that have happened to you before, the persona that you've identified with. So all of a sudden your life goes from like this narrow path where everything kind of stays the same to anything can happen. Also, it's improved my relationships with people, especially the people that are constantly around me, and that we sometimes kind of can fall into that like monotony and like seeing them in the same way, and maybe even focusing on the things that we don't like about them. It's definitely helped me enjoy the people around me more. You guys know I'm all about magic, so it's definitely brought more magic into my life by allowing me to feel great and amazing and surprised in situations that before would have been just like normal and mundane. Because when you remove the filters, it's like every new situation has a new energy that you can tap into that's different. It doesn't have to be the same as it's always been before. And I think what's happening also is when you're removing all these filters and you're removing sort of like the mind voice from what's going on in your reality, it's like you are 100% there. You're 100% present to take in. And I believe that the way it feels for me is like I'm taking in more energy in the present moment. I'm taking in more of reality. So I have more to feel because I'm not limiting it with this filter of what I think is going to happen. And then, of course, the biggest thing for my life has been realizing that I make the best decisions by being a clean slate and by not assuming anything about myself, about other people, about other things, about how an experience is going to go. It's like really like I am this clean slate, just living the present moment, and every single thing that comes into my reality, every single thing that I have to decide whether I engage with it or not, it's about how I feel about it in the moment. And it's like a muscle that you have to train, where you get better at seeing if that thing is right for you and get better at removing all the filters so that you can make the best decisions you can. So in general, I think all of this, what it really is about having an open heart and coming into things and people and just life in general, coming into life and every moment with an open heart, not assuming that you know anything, and then that open heart is just going to grant you and gift you all these possibilities. And if you are an emotional authority in human design and you've already figured that out with your chart, then it's about having this open heart and observing how do decisions feel in your body as you maintain yourself open through time. And is there something that is saying, yes to you, and then maintaining that yes over time, and then that's how you're going to know if it's correct for you. And then on the other hand, if you're a non-emotional being, if that solar plexus for you is not defined, if it's white, then it's about bringing that open heart to the present moment. And it's a little bit easier for you because then you get to trust what you feel in each of those present moments, and you can make that decision without waiting. So again, if you don't know human design, then this is all Chinese to you. I definitely recommend go check it out. Like if you listen to my stuff and you follow me and you don't know human design, then go check it out because it is so amazing and so cool. So those are the lessons that I have learned from being an emotional authority in human design, and then taking the leap to experimenting with myself, experimenting with my consciousness, changing things in my life so that I can see what works and what doesn't, what makes me feel better, and what leads to a more fulfilling, more satisfying life for myself. And I hope that you will do the same. I hope that you will do the same. Until next time, I love you. Go out there and stay true.